On the topic of primates, I wanted to know this because I've recently put together a documentary. I'm a bit of a documentarian myself. And I was out in the wilderness in the Glasshouse Mountains in Sunshine Coast, hunting for the very elusive yowie. Now, you're a man who spends a lot of time in the bush. Are yowies real?
No, they're not.
No. Well, you shit all over me fucking video, mate. Can someone go and watch it?
Look, I think there's a number of mysteries out there. The black camphor of Australia, that doesn't exist. Maybe, and I know there were records that a black panther did escape. Essentially, it was one, I think, the American Army, they brought over mascots. And I think 2 of the panthers were released into an area outside of the Blue Mountains, I believe. Right. The reality of the situation is this. And look, this is coming from knowing people in the industry who are ecologists and study, animal patterns and behavior and carrying capacity and everything else. In order for a species to be somewhat ecologically viable and to survive a length of time, I believe there has to be 26 individuals, right, of a population, of the species of a population within an area, within a cluster, for it to be a viable population. And this is talking about like genetic diversity and all that kind of thing, right? So the problem about, people wishing that there was the Tasmanian tiger out there, the reality of the situation is, unfortunately, for much of that area which has been, ventured into before, people set up game cameras, people do bushwalking. You think that at some point in time, one would have been hit by a car or someone would have taken a fucking picture or that kind of thing. You got to take a step back and you got to think, well, what was it about this animal that brought it to extinction, right? And if I think of the Tasmanian tiger, I think of like a camp dog. I hate to say it, but an animal that was extremely curious, an animal that was not nervous around people, an animal that was opportunistic, an animal that wasn't scared to go and, take something out of like the bin out of someone's backyard or to steal the dog food or the cat food from the front yard. They were a very opportunistic animal. And because of that reason, they were easily to hunt, right? So, there's a whole behavioural kind of thing that you can put into animals, a whole behavioural framework that you can put into a species of animals to try and work out, what made it extinct. And for that animal, unfortunately, it was a number of things, including its the fact that it was opportunistic. It was a very easy animal to hunt and to wipe out. If it was more like a quoll, or if it was more like a, a species of animal which is somewhat more reclusive or sensitive to human encroachment and that kind of stuff, then it probably could have fucking survived in a really remote spot in Tasmania.
So you would think by that logic that if a Tasmanian tiger or thylacine was still living, that someone would have seen it because they have those characteristics, those behavioural characteristics, that they go out and they try and they're not scared of people. They'll go out and they'll do this. They'll go out and they'll do that, and they'll always eventually be in the eye line of someone with a camera or something like that.
100%, man. And not just that. You think of roadkill as well. The amount of animals that get killed on Tasmanian roads and the wallabies, and the wallabies were essentially the main food source of the Tasmanian tiger. One would have popped up sooner or later. I think the last account was in 1986, which was a Parks and Wildlife person from Tasmania that had the last real sighting. And essentially what I believe happened, I've actually got a friend, Forrest Galante, which went to Tasmania doing all the research on this, part of his Animal Planet series, Extinct or Alive, which is a really interesting series. A producer I've worked with just with my History Channel stuff. But he went in there to, disclose what was happening. And look, essentially the biggest thing for this species is the fact that a lot of the areas where they survived in have now been developed. I don't think a small cluster population could exist. I'd love it to. This would be every naturalist's greatest fucking discovery. Sure. Like holy shit. But the unfortunate reality is, no, I don't believe this species is alive. It would have been found. It would have popped up in someone's backyard. You know, even if there were 10 of them around. The thing that you got to think about too is home range. What I mean by home range is the area that an animal utilizes to hunt. And if it's anything like a dingo or anything like, you know, like a cat species, generally the home ranges are like, you know, it could be anywhere from 8 to 20 kilometers. You know what I mean? That's a fucking big area that these animals are roaming, you know, not within a 1 kilometer fucking space, you know? Look, I think there's a lot of questions whether or not they should, you know, in the future, if they do have the capacity to reintroduce it, doing the whole, you know, fucking Jurassic Park thing. I don't think the Australian landscape, particularly Tasmania, has changed that much. I think it'd be great to fucking bring back an insurance population. What's your opinion?
Well, one of the things that we were going to do, and we're still going to do, and we're going to forget this podcast ever happened, is we're going to go and find one. We're going to take Adam, and we're going to ask you as well. Obviously, you're going to be on the more skeptical side, but that was something I was going to bring up with you at a later date when we get the funding and all that type of shit. But that's well, you know, we'll talk. And obviously, you know, you avoided the question on the Yowie, so you must be a government shill. But I mean, my thought is from someone who enjoys nature and animals in general. I'd love one to just be scurrying around somewhere. But logically, when you think of these things, someone has to have seen one with, as you said, a trail cam, or, you know, everyone's got iPhones. You'd think that would happen. Now, when we did the Yowie video, the people who we did it with, they told us that Yowies, I don't know if you're aware of this, interdimensional beings. So,
right.
Yeah, so that's why, you know, we don't have that footage. So, you know, just wanted to educate you on the matter there, Andrew. But it's one of those things where, you know, people's minds do run wild. But also in saying that, the Australian bush, the American mid-northwest, the forest, it is a vast area. And I mean, you know, there's always that chance